Hi, my name's Eric. I'll be reading you selections from the e-edition of today's Cape Cod Times. Today's date is Monday, May 6th of 2024. We'll start with the weather, as we always do across the Cape and Islands this morning. A couple of showers. Tonight, low clouds. A high this afternoon of 62, a low in the overnight of 52. Tomorrow, Tuesday, partly sunny, high of 63, low of 48. Nice day. On Wednesday, mostly cloudy, little rain off and on throughout the day, high of 62, low of 49. On Thursday, you can expect cloudy showers around in the afternoon, high of 56, low of 46. And on Friday, mostly cloudy with a passing shower or two, high of 57, low of 45. We are certainly in the spring rains, and April and May are doing exactly what they're supposed to. They are getting wet and everything's turning green. Sunrise this morning will be at 5:31 a.m. It will set at 7:45 p.m. We'll have 14 hours, 14 minutes of daylight today. Moonrise at 4:31 a.m. and will set at 6:18 p.m. Now, heading to the front of the paper where the news and the lottery results are kept, and we read the lottery results because somebody asked for them. If there's something you would like read to people who are blind or print disabled, you can email us at info@audiblelocalledger.org or call us at 508-539-2030, and we'll consider reading it. And if you miss any of the information that we share in our readings, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org, and in the upper right corner is the Archived Readings tab. Click on that. You'll find a week's worth of our newspaper readings so you can catch up on anything that you might have missed. We also keep our grocery shopping guides there so you can see what's on sale at the grocery store. If you go to the Literature tab, you'll find almost 100 pieces of literature or summaries and novellas of different great books that stay up there in perpetuity. All of that's free for people who are blind or print disabled at audiblelocalledger.org, the Archived Readings tab. Now, for the latest results, we go to masslottery.com because the Cape Cod Times goes to press too early to give you those latest results. So for the numbers game of Sunday, May 5th, yesterday in the midday afternoon drawing, the numbers were 5, 4, 9, 7. Again, yesterday's midday drawing, 5, 4, 9, 7. In the evening drawing last night, the numbers were 8, 1, 3, 2. Again, the numbers game for Sunday, May 5th, evening drawing numbers were 8, 1, 3, 2. Mass cash results for Sunday, May 5th, 4, 28, 29, 32, and 33. And Lucky for Life rounds out our lottery results for Sunday, May 5th with 1, 6, 10, 16, and 27, with 8, the bonus number. Hope you had a lucky Cinco de Mayo yesterday and enjoyed it. And maybe, if you're lucky and you win something, remember us. Now heading to the front page of the Cape Cod Times for today, Monday, April 6th, the headline reads, Outlook's a breeze. Vineyard Wind looks to add more turbines to take advantage of fair May weather, by Heather McCarran. Energy from the Vineyard Wind 1 project is slowly ramping up as turbines are added to the wind farm south of Martha's Vineyard, and they're sending power to the New England electric grid by way of Covell Beach and Centerville. The project currently has 9 turbines out of 62 that are planned that have entered energy production or are going through the final stages of the commissioning process, said Vineyard Wind spokesman Craig Gilvarg. With May's arrival and far more ideal weather conditions forecasted, the project is resuming installation of transition pieces in the project area. We're ready for a robust and productive turbine installation campaign in the months ahead and look forward to partnering with the project's skilled union workforce to deliver more capacity from this historic project, Gilvarg said. The turbines will be put to work churning energy from the winds that blow over the outer continental shelf 15 miles south of the vineyard and Nantucket. There's a very large photo taking up much of the front page of today's Cape Cod Times, and the cut line on the photo, or the caption, reads, "The Danish ship Sea Installer," at the top of a photo, carries components for a wind turbine on Monday at the Vineyard Wind 1 offshore wind farm site 12 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. The vessel sits beside a monopile foundation ready for installation of another turbine. What's happened with the project so far this year? Vineyard Wind 1, which is a joint venture of Avangrid and Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, touted as the nation's first commercial-scale offshore wind farm, has achieved a handful of milestones in the first 5 months of this year. The company began testing the first of its turbines on January 2nd by delivering a brief spurt of about 5 megawatts of power to the mainland. By February 21st, the first 5 turbines were put into full service following a series of similar tests for each one, which is part of the commissioning process. At that time, they were constantly generating a combined 68 megawatts of electricity, enough to power 30,000 homes. The end of February saw another 4 installed and awaiting commissioning, a 10th under construction, and the parts of an 11th turbine getting prepared for transport to the site. Executives have said they hope to have all 62 turbines operational by year's end, though that will depend on weather. And how much power will Vineyard 1 produce? Eventually, Vineyard 1 will produce 806 megawatts of power. That's enough to power more than 400,000 homes and businesses in Massachusetts. Once it's complete, the project is expected to reduce carbon emissions by more than 1.6 million metric tons per year. That's the equivalent to taking 325,000 cars off the road annually, according to the company. How does it work? The project generates power using General Electric Haliade X turbines. They're placed 1 nautical mile apart in the Vineyard Wind 1 federal lease area. Each turbine includes a monopile that anchors it to the seafloor, topped by a transitional piece at the surface, then a tower topped by a nacelle and the blades. Each blade is 107 meters, or almost the length of a football field, including the end zones. 109.7 meters. The height of each turbine is about the same as 3 Statue of Liberties stacked up, about 850 feet, from blade tip to the water's surface. According to the U.S. Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, wind turns the propeller-like blades of a turbine around a rotor, which then spins a generator, which creates electricity. The power is collected by an offshore substation and then transmitted through lines under the seabed, traveling at higher voltages than onshore because it's more efficient. Onshore substations put the power through a series of transformers to downgrade the voltage so it's compatible with the capacity of the distribution lines. What makes the area south of the island so attractive for wind farms? Well, while offshore wind is just getting started in Massachusetts, the state is no stranger to wind power. There are more than 44 land-based wind farms in more than 30 communities, collectively generating more than 100 megawatts of power, according to the State Renewable and Alternative Energy Division. But when it comes to power generating capacity, offshore wind is the real workhorse. In addition to the shallowness of the waters, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution scientist Anthony Kirinich has noted that atmospheric conditions make the area south of the islands especially attractive for energy production from wind power. In certain places, the polar jet stream and the subtropical jet stream draw together and accelerate as everything moves from west to east. The wind farm area off Massachusetts is one place where this type of convergence happens, which creates consistently strong winds. Keeping it local, from the Cape and Islands section, car crashes into Orleans office supply store, by Marianne Bragg. In Orleans, a man who drove a car into the Staples office supply store just before noon Saturday brought firefighters to the scene at 136 Route 6A. The incident took place at 11:40 a.m. Saturday, Orleans Fire Chief George Deering said. The driver was evaluated for medical treatment and refused to be taken to Cape Cod Hospital. Orleans firefighters and a Barnstable County technical rescue crew braced the outside of the building after the crash. Outside the store, Deering said the town building department and the property owner were working with the fire department to stabilize and make the building safe. The building will be secured and repaired at a later date, Deering said. Staples is part of a shopping plaza off Route 6A with a wide parking lot in front. The store did not answer calls from the Times on Sunday. The other story in the Cape and Islands of today, Monday, May 6th of 2024, the Cape Cod Times, Bill stops robot dog from use as a weapon by Walker Armstrong. On March 6th, Barnstable police and a Cape Cod SWAT team surrounded a house on St. Francis Circle in Hyannis, trying to convince a distraught man who was barricaded inside to surrender peacefully. The man opened fire with a rifle, police said. Around noon, state police arrived with 3 robots, including a robotic dog named Roscoe, to help bring about what was a peaceful conclusion to the 7-hour standoff. By remote control, the robotic dog was used to inspect the basement. It encountered the armed man, who knocked Roscoe over. The robot righted itself, followed the man upstairs, and was again knocked over, and then shot 3 times and disabled, according to the state police. Boston Dynamics, the Waltham-based manufacturer of the canine robot, said it was the first instance globally of a robot in the field being shot at and damaged. Questions surrounding the ethical use of robotic technology have been central to the development of Roscoe, which is trademarked by manufacturer Boston Dynamics as Spot. Now, a bill in Massachusetts legislature might see some of those concerns addressed. The makers of the mechanical canine have been adamantly opposed from the outset to weaponizing advanced robotic technology. In our terms and conditions of sale, we prohibit our customers from weaponizing the robot or using it in any way that harms or intimidates anyone, said Brendan Schulman, Vice President of Policy and Government Relations at Boston Dynamics. As the industry has grown, he said, some people have weaponized certain robots. In response, Schulman said Boston Dynamics is supporting policy measures ensuring the safe and ethical use of robotic technology. Last week, Spot took a trip to the Massachusetts State House to promote a bill that would prohibit the weaponization of robots and promote their responsible use. Lots of people loved the robot. To see it in person and have the opportunity to control it, Schulman said. A robot like this is not designed to be a weapon system. It really has no business being weaponized by folks out in the public. The bill has been sponsored by Senator Michael Moore, a Democrat from Millbury, and Representative Lindsay Sabadoso, a Democrat from Northampton, who could not be reached for comment. Schulman said he hoped it will pass during this current legislative session. We're hoping that this Massachusetts bill becomes a model for the country, Schulman said. On March 6th at St. Francis Circle, 3 robots came to life, state police said. By remote control, 2 robots, PackBot 510 models, were used for surveillance. Roscoe went into the cellar, checked and cleared a closet as safe. Then the man with a rifle emerged. Later identified as Justin Morera, 30, the man knocked the machine over. The man was climbing the stairs when he discovered he was being followed by Roscoe. With guidance from Trooper John Ragoso, Roscoe had righted itself. When the suspect realized with apparent surprise that Roscoe was behind him on the stairs, he again knocked the robot over and then raised his rifle. The robot suddenly lost communications, state police said in a release. Troopers would later discover Roscoe had been shot 3 times by the suspect and had been rendered inoperable, state police said. After police fired tear gas into the home, Morera surrendered, according to authorities. He was arraigned March 14th in Barnstable District Court on charges of kidnapping, 9 counts of firearm armed assault to murder, intimidation of a witness, 3 counts of carrying without a license, and 9 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon, a firearm. In a press release, state police said the incident provided a stark example of the benefits of mobile platforms capable of opening doors and ascending stairs in tactical missions that involve armed suspects. Letting Roscoe enter the home prevented the need to use humans and avoided the chance a police officer would exchange fire with the suspect, state police said. The day after Roscoe was filled full of lead, Ragosa took it to Boston Dynamics to remove the bullets and assess the damage, according to the state police. The company's interested in keeping Roscoe for research. State police are in the process of getting a new spot. Schulman said even in instances where the person's in danger is a danger to others around them, robotic technology should not be used to inflict damage or cause harm. Robots like Spot should only be used to prevent further harm through nonviolent means, he said. The bill makes an exemption for military and other law enforcement personnel, such as defense contractors or police bomb squads. Although the bill allows those exceptions, Schulman said the company's policy remains focused on nonviolence. The focus really is on random people obtaining a robot, weaponizing it, and then putting themselves and others in harm's way, he said. And of course, also damaging the issue and reputation of the robotics industry, which then slows the adoption of robots. Editorial note: Walker Armstrong reports on all things Cape and Islands, primarily focusing on the courts, transportation, and the Joint Base Cape Cod military base. There's a photo in the Cape and Islands section of a couple of smiling seniors, solid to the core. Marine Corps pilot in the Korean War, Vernon Ehlers, who's 91 years old, of Chatham, is sharing a laugh with Marine Corps World War II veteran Marguerite Patrick at her South Yarmouth home on Friday morning as friends and family gathered to celebrate her 100th birthday, and they're laughing together. Marine Corps red filled Patrick's driveway as fellow veterans joined to celebrate, complete with a motorcade salute led by the Yarmouth Fire and Police Departments. Patrick served as a quartermaster for the Corps in Quantico, Virginia during the war. She had planned to join the Coast Guard, but liked the Marine Corps hats better, so she enlisted with them at the age of 20. Her Semper Fi cane in hand and 100-year tiara headpiece firmly in place, she worked the crowd and said she considers herself a very lucky person. And then there is a picture of her as a lovely young woman, a family photo of Patrick from during the war. Thank you, both of you, Vernon and Marguerite, for your service and sacrifice for our country. Again, in an effort to keep it local, we'll move to the sports page where Falmouth star Lind, L-I-N-D, receives a scholarship by Courtney Jacobs. Congratulations. When it comes to Cape Cod basketball, Tegan Lind is one of the best. She finished her senior season at Falmouth High with 16 points per game. She led her team to the playoffs, and she scored her 1,000th career point. On Friday, Lind entered the Falmouth High Gymnasium one last time, but it wasn't to play basketball. Lind was presented the Dave Whiteside Scholarship of $1,250, which has only been awarded to 4 people prior to her since 2021. Dave Whiteside grew up playing basketball and loved the game. During his career at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, he averaged 16.4 points, 5.2 rebounds, shot 64% from the field, and 86.2% from the free throw line. In his junior year, Whiteside led the NC2A Division III in free throw percentage at 90.9% and led his team to the NCAA Division III tournament. In 2012, he was inducted into the UNC Greensboro Athletic Hall of Fame. He died in December of 2019 due to a bout with pneumonia. A year after his death, his friends got together and formed a scholarship around the characteristics he valued. Those characteristics are hard work, dedication, commitment, teamwork, leadership, citizenship, and making it fun. Lind showcased one of those characteristics with her commitment to Falmouth. A lot of coaches tried to recruit Lind to play at a prep school, but she said she wanted to stay and play for her hometown, Falmouth. If she had left, we'd have had a much different run here than we've had. I can't say enough about her, Falmouth basketball head coach Bob Boucher said. Whiteside's daughter, Carly, has carried on his legacy and name through the scholarship as she presents the award to the winner each year. I'm super thankful that so many of the people that loved my dad, his friends, his teammates, our family members have continued to support this scholarship and keep it alive, because it means so much to all of us that we're continuing to talk about him and continue to bring his name up, Carly Whiteside said. I know that would make him really proud. I'm very happy we continue to do this each year. Carly Whiteside said the selection process was different this year because she's not as involved with high school basketball as she was when she first graduated from Barnstable High School in 2019. I spoke with friends of mine and coaches that I know on the Cape, and everyone kept telling me about this player, Tegan, from Falmouth, Carly Whiteside said. Tegan truly embodies the qualities that my dad valued so much. To make it official, Lynn picked up a black Sharpie and wrote, Tegan Lynn, 2024, above the names of the winners from previous years. It feels amazing, Lynn said. Carly's amazing, and it's such an honor to receive this award because her father was such a great guy for all the things he did, on and off the court. It's super inspiring to hear her dad's story, so I'm super honored to get this award. Boucher knew Lynn was special before she stepped foot on the hardwood. He was her 7th grade math teacher when she was only 12 years old. She wasn't afraid to ask questions. She helped the other kids and really made that class a special class, Boucher said. You could see that she was a different kid. She cares about others, and she's smart, but she doesn't flaunt it. That boldness and humility translated to the basketball court as Boucher made Lynn the captain over the past 2 years. He said there are a lot of younger girls that play, and Lynn was there to guide them. She made sure freshmen were taken care of and not picked on, and she made sure they're part of the team. As a coach, that's gold, Boucher said. Lynn will be continuing her basketball career at Middlebury College in Vermont and will study pre-med biology. It'll be a place where I can have high academics and high-level basketball, so I'm super excited, Lynn said. Congratulations and good luck, Ms. Lind. From local, let's move to regional. We've completed all the local news, except for the obituaries, which will be coming up at the half hour shortly. The headline on the cover, Mass Gig Workers Status Hinges on Court Battles by Nate Raymond of Reuters in Boston. Massachusetts has become the latest front in a years-long battle in the U.S. over whether ride-hail drivers for Uber and Lyft should be treated as independent contractors or employees entitled to benefits and wage protections. The state's top court is set to hear arguments on Monday over whether to let dueling ballot measures go before voters in November that would redefine the relationship between app-based drivers and companies like Uber, Lyft, Instacart, and DoorDash, whose businesses help fuel the gig worker economy. An industry-backed proposal would treat app-based drivers for these companies as independent contractors entitled to some new benefits, but would make clear they're not employees. A labor-backed proposal would let Uber and Lyft drivers unionize. Uber and Lyft also are preparing to face trial on May 13th in a civil lawsuit which was filed in 2020 by Maura Healey, who was the state's attorney general at the time and is now its Democratic governor. Massachusetts accuses the companies of unlawfully classifying their drivers as contractors to avoid treating them as employees entitled to a minimum wage, overtime, and earned sick time. Should the industry fail in court and at the ballot box, Uber and Lyft face the prospect of a sweeping overhaul of their business model. Uber's lawyers said in court papers such a change could force it to cut or end service in Massachusetts. A victory for the companies in a state with some of the nation's most employee-friendly laws could embolden them in other states, according to labor activists. In Massachusetts, the eyes of the country are going to be on us this year, and in November in particular, because this is ground zero for this fight. Shannon Liss-Rorden, a lawyer who has pursued cases against Uber and Lyft nationwide, said at an event on Tuesday concerning the ballot questions. Uber and Lyft have defended against claims that their drivers should be classified as employees because the companies have significant control over working conditions. The flexibility of gig work and the ability of drivers to work for competing apps are hallmarks of independent contracting, according to the companies and their allies. Employees can cost companies up to 30% more than independent contractors, according to various studies. By not classifying their drivers as employees, Uber and Lyft avoid paying over a 10-year period $266.4 million into workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, and paid family medical leave in Massachusetts, the state's Democratic auditor said in a report that was released on Tuesday. Yes, $266.4 million just in Massachusetts. In a $200 million campaign in 2020, Uber, Lyft, and others persuaded California voters to pass a measure similar to the one that's backed by the companies in Massachusetts, solidifying drivers as independent contractors with some benefits. Litigation challenging that measure is ongoing. Fights over the rights of drivers have played out elsewhere. In New York, for example, Uber and Lyft in November struck a $328 million deal with the state's Democratic Attorney General to resolve claims that they cheated their workers out of pay. The companies in that settlement agreed to institute a minimum earnings floor, quote-unquote, and paid sick leave, akin to the industry-backed proposal in Massachusetts. Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and Instacart have provided millions of dollars to an industry-backed ballot question committee called Flexibility and Benefits for Massachusetts Drivers to support proposed state ballot measures that would keep app-based drivers as contractors, but establish an earnings floor equal to 120% of the state's minimum wage, or $18 an hour in 2023 before tips. Drivers also would receive health care stipends, occupational accident insurance, and paid sick time under these proposals. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court blocked a ballot measure similar to the current industry-backed one from going before voters in 2022. To hedge its bets, Flexibility and Benefits for Massachusetts Drivers is gathering signatures for 5 different versions of the current ballot question, only one of which would be put before voters on November 5th. Our ballot question will secure all of these things for drivers while allowing them to maintain the minute-by-minute flexibility they cherish in demand, Connor Units, a spokesperson for the ballot committee, said at the Tuesday event. Moving to the national stage, Trump likens his rival to Nazis, accuses Democratic opponent of running a Gestapo administration. By Doina Chaushu of Reuters in Washington. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump accused Democratic rival President Joe Biden of running a Gestapo administration in a private address to donors in which he also attacked prosecutors involved in his criminal indictments, according to a recording that was heard by U.S. media outlets. Trump, whose own rhetoric has drawn accusations of fascist tendencies from civil rights groups and other critics, made the comparison with the Nazi police in Germany's World War II regime at a donor retreat Saturday night at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida. The comments came after Trump reprised his complaint that the multiple indictments against him were politically motivated. He had just concluded 11 days of a New York hush money trial in which he's charged with falsifying business records to cover up a $130,000 payment which was made to a porn star. These people are running a Gestapo administration, Trump said, according to an audio recording which was heard by the New York Times and the Washington Post. And it's the only thing they have, and it's the only way they're going to win, in their opinion, and it's actually killing them. But it doesn't bother me. The Trump campaign didn't respond to a request for comment on the reported remarks. In a statement, White House spokesman Andrew Bates sought to contrast Biden's conduct in office with Trump's latest remark, accusing the former president of echoing fascist rhetoric, lunching with neo-Nazis, and fanning debunked conspiracy theories that have cost brave police officers their lives. President Biden is bringing the American people together around our shared democratic values and the rule of law, an approach that's delivered the biggest violent crime reduction in 50 years, said Bates. Trump, who held office from 2017 to 21, faces an array of legal troubles in criminal and civil cases while he seeks to regain the presidency in the November 5th election, and he denies wrongdoing in all the cases. Trump has made a series of inflammatory and racist statements on the campaign trail, using violent imagery to lambaste immigrants and opponents. He has warned of possible violence if he doesn't win the 2024 election, and has compared immigrants to animals. In November, Biden attacked Trump for using the word vermin to refer to his political enemies, saying it echoed the language of Nazi Germany. Also last year, Trump said immigrants who entered the country illegally were poisoning the blood of our country. Some historians say such comments mirror that of autocrats who have sought to dehumanize their foes. The Trump campaign has previously rejected comparisons to Nazis, Adolf Hitler, and Italy's Benito Mussolini. The Jewish Council for Public Affairs denounced the Nazi comparison on Sunday. It's always wrong, offensive, and despicable to make comparisons like this, even more so when taken alongside the former president's long history of normalizing anti-Semitism, said Amy Spitalnik, chief executive of the Public Policy Group. It was especially heinous to use Nazi comparisons in the service of a bigoted, authoritarian agenda, she said. On Saturday night, Trump again took swipes at the federal and Georgia prosecutors working on cases against him, according to the media reports. Trump, a former New York businessman and reality television host, described Mexican immigrants as rapists and drug smugglers as he declared his candidacy for the Republican nomination in the 2016 election. He drew widespread criticism after a violent 2017 rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, for equating white supremacists with counter-protesters and saying, well, both sides were to blame. Biden had said the events in Charlottesville, where one woman was killed, motivated him to run for president against Trump in 2020. We're at the midway point of our reading. Regular listeners are aware, I'm sure. It's at this stage in our reading that we move to a different kind of local news, the obituaries and death notices that are listed in the Cape Cod Times for that day. We're reading the edition of Monday, May 6th of 2024. And the first obituary is of Robert V. White of Centerville, who was known as Bob, who at the age of 83 passed on Thursday, April 4th. Bob was predeceased by his beloved wife of 52 years, Pamela Powers White. He was born December 5th, 1940, in New Haven, Connecticut. Bob graduated from Milford High School in 1958, and after high school he went on to West Virginia Wesleyan College in Buckhannon, West Virginia, graduating in 1963 with a bachelor's degree in education. He furthered his education at West Virginia University and Central Connecticut State University, where he earned his master's degree. During his time at West Virginia Wesleyan, Bob was a four-year starter on the football team, playing both offensive tackle and defensive linebacker. During his tenure on the team, he was a two-year all-conference player, was named captain and MVP of the team his senior year. He was inducted into the West Virginia WC Athletic Hall of Fame as both an individual and as a member of the 1961 championship team. He was also a member of the Theta Chi fraternity. Bob loved to tell stories about his college days and enjoyed many reunions with his WVWC classmates. After graduating, Bob continued to play football. He played professional football for the Boston, now New England, Patriots in 1963. After a short stint in the NFL, he played minor league football in Connecticut from 1964 to 1972. Bob played for the Ansonia Knights, Hartford Charter Oaks, Waterbury Orbits, and the Hartford Knights again. Bob began his teaching and coaching career shortly after his time with the Patriots. He taught and coached in Flushing, New York, as well as in Hartford, Connecticut, before being hired by the East Hartford Board of Education. Taught phys ed and health in East Hartford from 1968 to 2003. Bob was a runner before it became in vogue. He ran every day at school and was often seen running down Silver Lane wearing a rubber jacket with a towel around his neck. During his time in East Hartford, Bob coached football, softball, and cross country. took over a struggling girls softball team in 1978 as a one-year commitment with the one goal of not making any player cry. And after many tears that season, mostly his own, Bob was hooked. He continued to coach the softball team for the next 24 years, and during these years there were more ups than downs. There was an undefeated season and many fond memories. In 2003, Bob retired after 38 years in education, 20 more years as a trainer at the YMCA of Cape, and moved to the Cape, where they spent many days enjoying Patriots and Red Sox games, traveling, gardening, and enjoying life. He was a communicant of Our Lady of Victory Parish, where he served as an usher and greeter for many years. Bob was a sharp-dressed man who will be remembered for his legendary tan, his quick wit, and his kind demeanor. His greatest joy in life was spending time with his family. He was the original girl dad. He taught his 3 daughters how to throw a ball, run a race, stack wood, paint a house, and mow a lawn. He taught us how to pack a cooler and the multiple uses for athletic tape. He taught us that nothing's impossible and that hard work always pays off. He taught us grit, perseverance, and resilience. Bob especially enjoyed his role as Grampy to his 5 grandchildren and spent many happy summers with them, making them laugh. After many years surviving in a house of opinionated females, Bob became especially close with his sons-in-law, Todd and Sean, was often seen sharing a story or a beer with them. He is survived by many who will miss him dearly. And the family would like to express their gratitude to the doctors, nurses, and staff at Cape Cod Hospital and Beth Israel Hospital, especially the staff of FAR 11 and FAR 2 at Beth Israel. Visiting hours for Bob will be held on Thursday, May 9th, that's this Thursday, from 4 to 7 p.m. in the Chapman Funeral Home at 3778 Falmouth Road. That's Route 28 in Marston's Mills. A funeral mass will be celebrated this Friday, May 10th, at 10:30 a.m. in Our Lady of Victory Church at 230 South Main Street in Centerville. Burial will follow in the St. Francis Xavier Cemetery in Centerville. In lieu of flowers, any expressions of sympathy in his memory can be made to the Cape Cod Neighbors Fund, P.O. Box 36, Hyannis, Mass. Or to Cape Abilities, 86 Willow Street, Yarmouthport, Mass. The next obituaries of Nathaniel, known as Nat Toby, beloved husband, father, grandfather, and friend, who passed surrounded by family on April 16th in Falmouth at the age of 85. Nat was born March 4th, 1939 in Hyannis. He was a graduate of Barnstable High and went on to have a career as an accomplished mechanic and trucker, making significant contributions to the family sanitation business. In addition to his professional achievements, Nat was a talented musician and singer who could play several instruments. Nat was known for his loyalty, reliability, and selflessness. He was always ready to lend a helping hand, and he was a friend to all. His kindness and generosity touched the lives of many. He was a superhero to his children and family. Nat found solace and community at the First Pentecostal Church in Mashpee and Calvary Baptist Church in Hyannis, and he was a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. He'll be deeply missed by many. A memorial service to celebrate Nat's life is planned for late June, with details to be announced on social media. Nat's legacy of kindness, hard work, and love will continue to inspire all those who had the privilege of knowing him. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. John 3:16. The next obituary is of Claire Ann Porbay of Norwood, who passed on May 2nd at the age of 92. Born, raised, and educated in the Jamaica Plain neighborhood of Boston, Ms. Porbay continued her education at the Forsyth Dental School. After graduation in 1949, she joined the staff at the Forsyth Dental Infirmary as a dental hygienist. It was here that she met her husband-to-be, Dr. John Jack M. Porbay. A week after her marriage to Dr. Porbay, the couple moved to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Canada for several years. She and her young family would relocate back to the U.S. in 1960, settling in Norwood, where she would raise her family. Ms. Porbay and her husband were active communicants and parishioners at St. Timothy Church in Norwood, as well as leaders in the F.A. Cleveland School PTA and the Zavarian Brothers High School Parents Council. She enjoyed spending time at the family home in East Dennis, along with traveling, reading, and she had a passion for antiquing. Ms. Porbay is survived by her loving children and many who will miss her dearly. Visiting hours will be held this Tuesday, tomorrow, May 7th, from 9 to 10 a.m. at the Cornack Funeral Home, located at 1248 Washington Street in Norwood. It will be followed by a massive Christian burial at St. Margaret Mary Church, 845 Washington Street in Westwood at 10:30 a.m. The interment will be held in Knollwood Memorial Park in Canton. Donations in Ms. Porbay's memory may be made to the Matt Brown Foundation at mattbrownfoundation.org. Our final obituary is of Charles Edward Johnson of Yarmouthport, who passed peacefully on May 4th. Charlie was a lifelong resident of Yarmouthport, spent his career with the Cape Cod Gas Company, spent a great deal of his time with his family on Bass River, where he was a board member at the Yacht Club. Charlie was the beloved husband of Joyce M. Collins. He was a devoted father and grandfather, and leaves many who will miss him dearly. Please join us for a celebration of life on Sunday, July 14th at noon. We'll be grilling at Bass Hole, Grays Beach. In lieu of flowers, please send donations to the McCarthy Care Center at 73 Service Road, East Sandwich, 02537. And with that, we have come to the end of our obituaries, death notices, and memorials that are listed in the Cape Cod Times of Monday, May 6th of 2024. Heading back to the cover, front page of today's Cape Cod Times, Israel Cabinet votes to kick out Al Jazeera by John Bacon. Arab media giant Al Jazeera said Sunday it would pursue every legal step, quote unquote, to continue operating in Israel hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet voted to shut down the Qatari-based global outlet until the war in Gaza ends. A government statement said Israel's communications minister signed orders to act immediately, but at least one lawmaker who supported the closure said Al Jazeera could still try to block it in court. The measure, the statement said, includes closing Al Jazeera's offices in Israel, confiscating broadcast equipment, cutting off the channel from cable and satellite companies, and blocking its websites. It did not mention Al Jazeera's Gaza operations. Netanyahu has long accused Al Jazeera of bias towards Hamas, said the cabinet determined the outlet was a threat to national security. Al Jazeera correspondents have harmed the security of Israel and incited against Israel's soldiers, Netanyahu said. The time has come to eject Hamas's mouthpiece from our country. Al Jazeera rejected these claims as dangerous and ridiculous lies that puts its journalists at risk. The network is funded by the Qatari government, which has been a key mediator in ceasefire talks. Like many media outlets around the world, however, Al Jazeera has been critical of Israel's military operation in Gaza. The Israeli PM and his military wanted everything to happen and be concealed without anybody reporting or talking about it, said Al Jazeera reporter Hani Mahmoud. Hamas called Israel's decision on Al Jazeera a blatant violation of freedom of the press and a repressive and retaliatory measure against Al Jazeera's professional role in exposing the crimes of the occupation. That was Hamas that said that. The UN Human Rights Office also criticized the closure. We regret cabinet decision to close Al Jazeera in Israel, it said on X. A free and independent media is essential to ensuring transparency and accountability, now even more so given tight restrictions on reporting from Gaza. Freedom of expression is a key human right, and we urge government to overturn the ban. Israel's parliament last month ratified a law allowing the temporary closure in Israel of foreign broadcasters that are considered to be a threat to national security. The law allows Netanyahu and his security cabinet to shut the network's offices in Israel for 45 days, a period that can be renewed, so the shutdown could stay enforced until the end of July or until the end of major military operations in Gaza. Netanyahu warned that Israel will make no deal that would free hostages in exchange for ending the war, saying that would keep Hamas in power and pose a threat to Israel. However, he said Israel is willing to pause fighting in Gaza in order to secure release of the approximately 130 hostages still being held by Hamas-led militants. But while Israel has shown willingness, Hamas remains entrenched in its extreme positions. First among them, the demand to remove all Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip to end the war and leave Hamas in power, Netanyahu said. Israel cannot accept that. Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh said that the militants remain committed to a comprehensive ceasefire that guarantees Israel's withdrawal from Gaza. He blamed Netanyahu for the continuation of the aggression and the expansion of the circle of conflict and sabotaging the efforts that have been made through the mediators in various parties. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said it appears that Hamas won't accept the latest hostage deal, and the military will launch its offensive into the southern Gaza city of Rafah in the near future, the Times of Israel reported. The U.S. is among scores of nations urging Israel not to invade the city, which is packed with more than 1 million Palestinians who have fled the fighting elsewhere in Gaza. Israel believes thousands of Hamas fighters are holed up in Rafah, along with potentially dozens of hostages. Such an incursion would put hundreds of thousands of lives at risk and be a huge blow to the aid operations of the entire enclave, the UN Humanitarian Office said on Friday. The war began after Hamas stunned Israel with a cross-border raid on October 7th, in which 1,200 people were massacred, slaughtered, tortured, raped, and killed, and 252 hostages taken, according to Israeli tallies. More than 34,600 Palestinians have been killed, according to the Hamas's health ministry, and more than 77,000 have been wounded, again, according to Hamas. The bombardment has devastated much of the coastal enclave and caused a humanitarian crisis. Israel shut down humanitarian aid shipments through the Karim Abu Salam border crossing after a nearby rocket attack injured several people, Israeli officials said Sunday. Hamas claimed responsibility for the attack. Israel's military said 10 projectiles were launched from Rafah in southern Gaza toward the crossing, which it said was now closed to aid trucks going into the coastal enclave. However, other crossings remain open. Hamas's armed wing said it fired rockets at an Israeli army base by the crossing, but didn't confirm where it fired them from. Shortly after the Hamas attack, an Israeli airstrike hit a house in Rafah, killing 3 people and wounding several. The Israeli military confirmed this counterstrike, saying it struck the launcher from which the Hamas projectiles were fired, as well as a nearby military structure. The launches carried out by Hamas adjacent to the Rafah crossing are a clear example of the terrorist organization's systematic exploitation of humanitarian facilities and spaces, and their continued use of the Gazan civilian population as human shields, it said. Hamas denies accusations, which are obvious, that it uses civilians as human shields. Our next headline, NASA and Boeing are confident in crewed mission. Starliner flight test is planned for May 6th. That's today. In Cape Canaveral, Florida, it's no secret that many are visibly wary of the Boeing company, plagued by high-profile problems with some of their aircraft on top of the lengthy time it took to get the Starliner spacecraft ready for this inaugural crewed flight. The company has been making news lately, and not in a welcome way. As a USA Today aviation columnist put it recently, Boeing is rightfully under a microscope right now. However, Both Boeing and NASA are firm in their confidence that the Starliner is ready for the crewed flight to the International Space Station that's planned for today. We have very robust processes, and the Certificate of Readiness process that we use to review everything, the design certification process, they're all very robust. Mark Nappy, Vice President and Program Manager of Boeing's Starliner program, said during a March NASA news conference. And the proof of that is the fact that the problems we have caught in the past have been caught as part of that process. During a recent flight readiness review, NASA Associate Administrator James Free said the first crewed flight of a new spacecraft is an absolutely critical milestone. The lives of our crew members, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, are at stake. We don't take that lightly at all. Don Platt, an associate professor of space systems from Florida Institute of Technology, said it's important to keep in mind that while Boeing has recently seen problems with their commercial aircraft, Boeing Space is a completely different division. Boeing commercial aircraft and space divisions are managed by essentially a whole different crew of people, Platt said. Boeing has separate divisions of management leading all the way back to the CEO, Platt said. For example, there are separate executive VPs for space and commercial aviation. As to the issues on the airline side of Boeing, Platt also said some of the 737 MAX problems were traced back to pilots not fully understanding new software. Boeing also has faced issues that could be tracked more to maintenance problems with the airlines rather than Boeing quality control. Neither of these issues would be a factor on the space side of the company as Boeing's working closely with NASA, Platt said. But Platt emphasized that NASA would not agree to put its astronauts on board if it wasn't confident of success. That doesn't mean there might not be issues that arise during this upcoming flight, experts noted. This is a new spacecraft. I'll also remind you this is a test flight, NASA's Free said during the flight readiness review. We have some unknowns in this mission. Being a test flight, we may encounter things we don't expect. But our job now is to remain vigilant and keep looking for issues. The first uncrewed test flight of Starliner, OFT-1, launched in 2019, and while it reached orbit, it failed to reach the ISS. The follow-up test flight, OFT-2, launched in 2022, and while it met standards of docking to the International Space Station, that's ISS, and successfully landing, multiple issues were discovered as Boeing crews inspected the spacecraft afterward. During the flight readiness review, it was stated that the issues found during that 2022 flight, including the flammability of the tape used on board and parachute problems, have been fixed. It was mentioned that 90% of the tape was replaced, and a January drop test of the parachutes was a success. On the ground side, NASA said that during pre-launch inspections, a questionable valve on Cape Canaveral Space Force Station's Launch Complex 41, which is the pad that the Starliner will launch from, was replaced. This valve has nothing to do with the spacecraft, as it's responsible for flowing liquid oxygen into the Atlas V rocket. During a March NASA news conference, Nappy spoke on Boeing's behalf when it comes to the readiness of their spacecraft. Our process in human spaceflight is very robust. We design around redundancy. Everything that's critical has some level of redundancy in it so that if something fails, we have a backup system to go to, Nappy said. We test, and test some more. NASA officials said they looked deep into the pre-flight performance of Starliner as part of the process to go forward. Space flight never comes without risk, yet NASA requires that risk be low. The loss of crew requirement is 1 in 270, and Boeing comes out with a slightly lower 1 in 295, according to Steve Stitch, program manager for NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Meanwhile, the loss of mission requirement for NASA is 1 in 55, and Boeing demonstrates a 1 in 57. Stitch gave these numbers during the flight readiness review. Starliner is also equipped with the ability to abort should something go wrong during ascent. Following the retirement of the Space Shuttle, NASA established its Commercial Crew Program, After a series of reviews, SpaceX and Boeing were selected to provide spacecraft that would transport astronauts to and from low Earth orbit. Awarded the contract in 2014, Boeing received $4.8 billion, while SpaceX received $3.1 billion. Bob Cabana, NASA astronaut, former Kennedy Space Center director, and former NASA Associate Administrator, said continued access to the International Space Station and low Earth orbit requires both the Dragon and Starliner to work well. I am so looking forward to having Boeing being able to fly CFT here on May 6th, Cabana said. The next headline, Student Assassin Game Could Have Dire Outcomes by Emily Koblenz. Police educators and state officials across the country are getting vocal about a TikTok trend called Senior Assassin that could get someone injured or worse if their toy gun is mistaken for a real one. The game is a senior class tradition in which 2 or more high schoolers use water guns to eliminate, quote-unquote, their targets, usually off-school grounds. Some are using paintball and airsoft guns, Fox News reports, and videos of the hits are being uploaded to TikTok and other social media platforms for entertainment. Authorities have issued warnings across the U.S. Police in Satellite Beach, Florida, issued a statement after a flood of 911 calls. Our officers respond to each of these 911 calls without knowledge of whether this is an incident of students just having fun or an actual crime, Satellite Beach Police said, as per Fox News. A Florida high school principal sent a video to parents warning them of the trend's dangers, asserting that any student participating on school grounds would face suspension, reported Florida Today, which is part of the USA Today network. Educators in Virginia issued similar warnings, telling WRC-TV that in stressful or high-pressure situations, it can be very difficult to quickly differentiate a toy gun from a real firearm, and that the confusion can lead to misidentification and potentially tragic consequences. Police in several Chicago suburbs have sent out alerts, WMAQ-TV reported, saying that there have been concerning incidents, including kids wearing ski masks and carrying fake weapons that look real. In one case, an adult who was a concealed carry holder in the restaurant mistook the situation for a genuine threat, and the situation could have escalated quickly. The gravity of the situation cannot be emphasized enough. It had the potential to lead to serious consequences, police in the suburb of Gurnee said in a statement on Facebook. In Michigan, the Sheboygan County Sheriff's Department and Sheboygan City Police Department issued a joint press release warning residents about the trend. Assassin-connected problems include a student breaking into another student's home to tag them. There have been car crashes and more. Similar to the Illinois incident, a group of students wearing ski masks entered a restaurant to find their opponents and were confronted by a licensed concealed pistol holder, according to the Sheboygan Daily Tribune, part of the USA Today network. This could really get someone hurt or killed, Sheriff Tim Cook said. And a Pennsylvania reporter wrote a story for the York Daily Record, part of the USA Today network, of her own encounter with the trend. I was folding laundry when I heard kids screaming, Angel Albring wrote. I stepped out onto my balcony to see several teenagers crouched down in the alleyway behind my yard. They were all wearing dark clothing and hoodies, hoods, and carrying what looked to be guns. Albring quickly realized what was happening, but not everyone might, authorities said. We'll close with a little bit of advice from Carolyn. Dear Carolyn, until last year our daughter, 34, and her 32-year-old sister were as close as could be. We all live nearby. About 2 years ago, tension became obvious between the older sister and her brother-in-law, including nearly physical confrontation. He accuses her of lashing out because she's lost control of her sister. She accuses him of being mentally and emotionally abusive to his wife. She says mutual friends and family have questioned whether her sister is safe. We don't believe there is any merit to the idea that he's abusive. We don't believe their friends or family think there is either. He can be selfish with his time or activities, but we see these as things every marriage needs to sort out. Our son-in-law is beside himself with anger about our older daughter's statements. He's demanded to know who has said he's abusive and doesn't feel comfortable around their friends as he wonders whether they said anything. Our daughter refuses to reveal her supposed sources. We don't think there really are any and think our daughter's too stubborn to admit this has gone too far. Our daughter's fracturing her sister's marriage. There's very little contact between the sisters and spouses. Our little grandchildren hardly see each other. We did sponsor some family counseling, but the sessions were basically shouting matches that went nowhere. Our daughters have resumed some communication, but we can't gather as a family. Any ideas on how to broker a peace? I am shocked, is the answer, at how ready you are to sell out your own daughter. Do you really believe her capable of crying abuse without merit, of wanting to control her sister? How were they once as close as could be if she's that vindictive? If she is, historically, isn't that the real problem? I'm also really uncomfortable with backing anyone who's beside himself with anger. That's not how healthy people react, and demanding to know who said what is not something kind, centered people do. Accusing his accuser of wanting control, saying friends can't be trusted, these are not only first steps towards isolating your daughter from her people, but also reactions that are typical of abusers when challenged. Your daughter's lost her composure too, which is why I've asked about her history of anger and control. And I wonder about your younger daughter, whether she bows to dominant types. She's central, and you barely mention her. I hope you see how problematic your role is here. Relationship abuse persists in part because people don't recognize it. Abusers can charm people valuable to them and discredit those they perceive as threats, right under smart people's noses. So, did I just describe your daughter? Your son-in-law? Both? Give a hard think to what you accuse your daughter of doing and whether that's the daughter you know. And get educated on what intimate abuse and control look like, because someone here is guilty of it, and you can't afford to be wrong. And with that advice, we've come to the end of our reading of today's Cape Cod Times of May 6th of 2024, a Monday. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other. Remember our vets. Bye for now.